Why do you think people attract someone that can be abusive and then stay in that type of relationship once they've been abused?
Yeah.
Where does that wound come from?
I mean, it's almost harder to leave once there's been abuse, because when we look at the brain, and this is just the science aspect of it, is the brain changes when there's abuse, and it's sort of like these highs and lows that create deeper bonding. So the more ups and downs we have with somebody, the deeper we bond, which is like the trauma bond that we all hear about, and like this toxic relationship, which is why so many people are like, oh, well, the sex is so good, or we're just so passionate together, but everything is chaos. And the deeper we go, the harder it is to get out of that. And on top of it, a lot of us who have experienced abuse have sort of normalized chaos and dysfunction. I grew up witnessing abuse. I grew up witnessing domestic violence, in homes that I was in, or around me, because I didn't grow up in safe areas. And so for me, I knew that it wasn't a good thing, but it also wasn't that different from what I had known.
It was familiar.
It was. And that was a nervous system pattern that I was working with.
Wow.
And so a lot of the work that I've done has been to reclaim my own inner mother and father, and to heal my nervous system, to actually be able to feel happy and comfortable in safe, secure situations, rather than actually unconsciously craving the chaos and dysfunction that I was so used to.
Yeah, I think I was very used to that as well. And I wasn't looking for chaos, but I somehow always attracted it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that was the way, why I kept repeating that cycle until I really said, okay, this does not work. Like when I meet someone, I shouldn't have these crazy emotions or these crazy butterflies anymore. I should have a feeling, but not some crazy feeling.
Yeah.
And it should be more of a conscious approach to getting to know someone and seeing their total behavior, like how their words meet their actions, meet their behaviors, and how the whole package. And as opposed to going into something super fast and explosive.
Yeah.
Like go slow and conscious.
Yeah. Falling into a relationship versus consciously choosing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that I really never did until I met my husband.
Really? Yeah, I never did either.
Yeah.
So when did you finally wake up and say, okay, I've been attracting these types of men that are chaotic, or maybe some are abusive, or they have abusive tendencies, or are explosive. And when did you finally wake up and say, okay, I need to do things differently?
I was in my mid-20s, and I ended up actually marrying somebody from another country. He was American. And we didn't want to get married. It's just that we were together for many years, and in order to try to make the relationship work, we needed to both be in the same country. And so we got married, and quickly, right after that, things just turned for the worse. It wasn't good already. It wasn't an abusive situation. We were both in our mid-20s. We're very immature. Both had very deep mother wounds and deep father wounds. Neither of us had a father. So you want to talk about projections. We were
Wow.
just projecting all of our parental wounds onto each other. I don't know if we knew each other at all, truthfully.
Right.
And in that relationship, I was deeply betrayed. There was a lot of betrayal, and it was as if the rug was ripped from underneath me. At the time, I lost all of my money. My cat, my soul cat, ran away.
Oh.
He left with another woman, and I gained like 20 pounds in a month. My hormones stopped producing because I had experienced so much stress from my abandonment wound being triggered. I went and tested my hormones, and all I had was cortisol. I was physically sick. My body physically just stopped. Everything stopped. And I remember a moment where he had come. He had been back and forth very sporadically, not in communication. We had shared a home, obviously, we were married. And he came to get some things. And instead of being vulnerable, because of course I didn't know how to do that, I just yelled at him and chased him out into the road without my shoes on and said, don't ever come back. I never want to see you again, which was not true at the time. And as he drove away with his new girlfriend, I remember feeling like I was 3 years old. And all of a sudden I had this flash of when I had been dropped off the first time at a foster home when I was 3. And I saw my mom's headlights pulling away, and I remember screaming and crying. And all of a sudden this relief washed over me, and it was just like, this is not about him. This is not about them. This is about you and your mother wound. And this is what you need to heal. This is about
Wow.
your own inner stuff. And even though it was so painful, in that moment, I was so grateful because I knew that I could get through it, because the pain was so deep that if it had been about him, I might not have survived it in my mind. But because it was about me and my inner work, I felt empowered. And so I just dove in. And that's kind of what kickstarted my healing journey.
Yeah, because you'd been essentially abandoned or betrayed by your father, who was never there. You've been betrayed by your mother. You've been betrayed by friends and, foster individuals and boyfriends in the past.
Everyone.
And then now your husband you're being betrayed by.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you realize you were betraying yourself as well
Yeah. I was
By-
just repeating.
by making unconscious decisions based on wounds, as opposed to based on a vision of what you wanted, a healthy vision. And there's no, I'm not blaming you. That's something I did most of my life too.
Yeah.
And it's really cool that you've got that awareness then, because a lot of us, myself included, repeat these patterns over and over again until the pain is so deep, until it's like, I just feel like I've ripped open everything in my body. I have nothing left.
Exactly.
Then hopefully you can wake up and have some clarity. That's what happened for me, and it sounds like it's what happened for you. What was the next step after that so that you could get to a place of conscious, healthy relationship?
Most of us hit that wall in crisis, and that's the opportunity. We can go down the path of bitterness, or we can be like, okay, this sucks and I never want to experience this again. So let's feel all of the feelings that I've never felt before. And that's probably what you experienced. I know it's what I experienced. All of a sudden, this hardened, ultra independent survivor mask was just ripped off. And all of a sudden I had feelings that I had to feel and vulnerability that needed to be expressed. And I had no idea how overwhelming that was going to be. And at one point, I just laid face down on my bed and closed my eyes, and I felt like I was on a psychedelic journey just from the pain. I would go to bed at night and think, I might die in my sleep tonight because this hurts too much. That's how deep the abandonment wound had been ripped open. And so I started doing deep mother work. I started doing a lot of transpersonal therapy, kind of Jungian style. I did a lot of medicine work, a lot of medicine ceremonies, over and over and over again. I spent all day in nature. I did breath work every week, and I just worked through it. And it was hard and so painful, but that was my only option. It was like the thing that I had to hold on to was this belief that eventually the pain would go away.
Wow.
And I remember writing a date on my calendar and telling my friend, I'm going to be done grieving by this date.
Good luck. Good luck.
And I kept having to move the date, and eventually I stopped setting a date,
Healing's a journey.
Yeah, it is.
It's not like this destination, like it's going to happen by now. I've said the same thing to myself in the past. I'm like, I'm going to make a decision by this. I'm going to be fine by this time. And it just keeps getting pushed, right? And I think it comes to you when you're ready for it. When you're ready and willing to fully receive all the lessons, and you're willing to surrender, you're willing to drop your ego and feel all the emotions and keep making consistent daily good decisions that are based on a conscious vision of what you want, as opposed to a past pain. Think of all the amazing things in life that are expressions of just you. For instance, the song you stream over and over again while you're in your 13th hour of gaming at 4 a.m. in the morning with all the lights off, trying not to wake up your roommates. Or the recommendations that you share with your friends on the top 6 comedy podcasts that are the best to listen to on your way to the gym and back. Or even your new haircut, which may or may not be an epic bowl cut from the 90s, and hopefully is. Everything that makes you, you, makes all the difference. State Farm believes insurance should work the same way. Your plan, your coverage, they need to be personalized to you. And the ability to choose the plan you want by picking the options that fit you, like building your home and auto policies, is exactly what the State Farm Personal Price Plan is all about. Getting the coverage you want at an affordable price just for you. So, are you ready to make things personal? Call or go to statefarm.com today to create your State Farm Personal Price Plan. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer, availability, and eligibility may vary. And so how long did it take until you said, I'm starting to feel some relief of all this deep healing work, of all this stuff? And were you doing it alone, or were you doing it with therapists and guides and coaches?
I was doing it in a combo. I was seeing therapists, I was seeing shamans, I was doing medicine work with myself and in community. And then I was creating a lot of processes for myself because I was just 24/7 in my feelings. I was not getting breaks because I hadn't felt any of my childhood. So people would always say, "How are you so normal right now? Like, how are you not just living homeless and addicted to drugs with everything that you've been through?" And I would say, "I'm just fine. Like, I'm
You were
fine."
numbing it.
I didn't know that, but yeah, I was. I just completely denied that I had any pain around it, you know? And so all of that I had to feel, all of it. And that was a lot. And so I started creating processes for myself to get through the long nights when I couldn't sleep.
What's a process look like?
One of them was I created a little meditation for myself to listen to over and over. Another one is I wrote a letter to myself from my inner mother telling me that I was going to be okay and just saying, like, I know that you're in pain right now. Everything's going to be okay. I promise it's not going to feel like this forever. Just loving myself. And I actually put it on my wall, taped to my wall, so that when I would look in the morning over at my wall, I would see it. And because I needed it, I needed that anchor. And there's many other things like writing about the vision of who I wanted to be in partnership with, how I wanted it to look. But also, it was really about deep accountability for how I had shown up in all of those relationships, which was not good.
Not blaming, but also taking responsibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference because blame is more about judgment and taking responsibility is about action.
Yes.
So for me, I had to take responsibility for the reality that I had never been vulnerable in my partnerships. I wasn't showing up authentically. I wasn't being very loving, and I wasn't really being open. So anyone who entered my field had no clue who I was underneath it all. And I certainly didn't know who they were because I wasn't vulnerable, right? And so we have to take a look at those things if we want to get to the conscious partnership. And that part is hard too, because it's easy to go down the blame train and be like, oh gosh, I did this all. It's all my fault.
Or they did this all to me.
Exactly. But you don't get anywhere that way. That way, that lane, if you get into the blame lane, that means you have to go back and start over in another relationship that's going to repeat the pattern until you keep hitting the wall. And then you're like, okay, I actually have something to do with this.
Right.
The other way is I'm going to take responsibility for my role. Yes, how they showed up is about them, but how I show up also matters, and it's about me. And if I want to create something different, where do I need to grow?
Yeah, and how we respond to people that maybe are doing things out of integrity to us that we don't want, how we react, or, why we stayed as opposed to saying, hey, this doesn't work for me anymore. This cannot happen. Otherwise, we're not going to be together anymore. Creating boundaries. So
or even entering the relationship to begin with.
In the first place, yeah. If it's not a conscious entering, then why are we doing it?
Yeah. I remember the guy that I entered the relationship with when I was 19. I was very young, not a conscious person, but I've always had intuitive hits and visions. Like I do know when something is right or not, or if there's something going to happen. And I sat on his couch and I got a message and it said, this guy is going to be abusive.
Oh my gosh.
And we weren't even living together yet. And, I just moved in with him. Right? And so.
Why do you think you moved in with him?
Well, because
if you knew that.
Because there wasn't a part of me yet that felt integrated in her inner woman, inner mother. I was just a kid. I was this immature, wounded kid starving for love. And I was addicted to the chaos. And we had very much a passionate, strong sexual connection. And I wanted that feeling, right? I wanted to experience that rush. And so we often do this where we just choose the thing that feels good over the thing that's actually going to get us where we want to be.